In the opulent halls of the Kensington estate, the twins of the recently widowed millionaire, Mr. Alexander Kensington, were restless. For months, the 4-year-old girls, Lily and Daisy, had kept their nannies awake with their cries and nightmares. But everything changed when a new caregiver arrived, an enigmatic woman named Maya Johnson. Mr. Kensington, it's simply not possible that 2 children who were awake all night are now sleeping like angels, exclaimed Margaret, the long-serving housekeeper, her voice echoing to the grand foyer. She's doing something illegal to those children. Maya, only 30 years old, stood calmly in the center of the marble hall, observing the older woman's dramatic gestures. She had anticipated this moment since she accepted the job 3 weeks prior, knowing the twins had driven away 6 nannies in just 2 months. Alexander Kensington, a prominent real estate tycoon and grieving widower, glanced between the 2 women, sensing the tension in the air. For the first time since his wife's tragic passing, his daughters were finally at peace, sleeping soundly through the night. "Margaret, those are serious allegations," he murmured, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation. "Serious, Mr. Kensington." This woman arrived from a small town with no proper references, and suddenly our girls, who used to scream from nightmares, are sleeping like babies. Something is very wrong. Maya took a deep breath, her eyes briefly meeting Alexander's. There was an unspoken connection, a curiosity about her true intentions. Why would a woman with her impressive background in child psychology choose to work in a household that had seen so much turmoil? "If you insist on investigating my methods," Maya said, her voice steady, "I suggest we install cameras in the girls' room. That way, everyone can see exactly what happens during the night." The suggestion stunned everyone. A guilty person wouldn't invite scrutiny. Alexander frowned, studying Maya's composed demeanor. There was an undeniable confidence about her that didn't align with the role of a mere nanny. Over the past few days, he had noticed peculiarities. Maya spoke multiple languages fluently, quoted child development studies with precision, and commanded respect from even the most important visitors. 3 weeks earlier, when the employment agency had offered her services, he had been desperate. The twins, traumatized by their mother's sudden death in a car accident, had spent their nights in turmoil. The entire household was exhausted. Margaret had always been vocal about her disdain for caregivers who didn't fit the right profile. But when Maya arrived, everything changed. The twins, usually hostile toward strangers, approached her with curiosity. That first night, they slept for 6 hours straight. A miracle. Cameras? Margaret stammered, caught off guard. "Well, I've already recorded some of our nighttime routines to document the girls' progress," Maya interjected, pulling out her phone. "Would you like to see?" Silence enveloped the room. Alexander noticed a shift in Margaret's expression, from defiance to panic. In the center of that grand hall, where generations of privileged families had made decisions about their staff, Maya stood firm, guarding secrets that were too powerful to reveal just yet. If this story of prejudice disguised as concern resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, Maya continued, her voice steady. What happens next will show that underestimating people based on their appearance can be the biggest mistake of your life. Margaret, unwilling to back down, took a step closer to the window overlooking the garden where Lily and Daisy were playing for the first time in months. "Mr. Kensington, you need to understand what's happening here," she insisted. "This woman shows up out of nowhere, and suddenly she has magical powers with children. Please." Alexander watched his daughters running freely, their laughter filling the air for the first time since their mother's funeral. It was impossible to deny the transformation. They were eating regularly, sleeping soundly, and even returned to preschool without panic attacks. "Margaret, maybe you're overreacting," he said cautiously. "The girls are being manipulated." Margaret interrupted, her voice rising. "You don't see it because you're desperate for a solution. But I know her type. They arrive humble, perform temporary miracles, and then start asking for favors." Maya remained still, observing Margaret's escalating frustration with a calmness that only seemed to irritate the housekeeper further. In fact, that reaction was precisely what she had anticipated from day one. 3 weeks earlier, When she stepped off the bus at the Kensington estate, Maya understood the dynamics she was entering. Growing up in a modest neighborhood, the daughter of a single mother who worked for affluent families, she had witnessed the same patterns repeatedly, established employees protecting their territory against newcomers, especially those who didn't fit the mold. "What bothers me the most," Margaret continued, her composure slipping, "is her calmness. A normal person would be nervous being accused of drugging children, but look at her. She stands there like she knows something we don't." "Actually," Maya said softly, "I do know something you don't." The silence was palpable. Margaret paled, as if she had just invoked something she wasn't prepared to confront. "I know Lily wakes up at 2:30 in the morning, because she dreams she's falling, just like her mother did when the car rolled over," Maya continued, her voice steady. "And I know Daisy can't sleep until she checks that all the doors are locked because, in her subconscious, the house isn't safe anymore since her mom left and didn't come back." Alexander felt a chill run down his spine. How did she know such intimate details about his daughter's nightmares? He had never shared this information with anyone. "I also know," Maya continued, now looking directly at Margaret, "that you've been telling other nannies in the neighborhood that this family needs someone of the same social standing to care for the girls. Very interesting messages in the elite domestic professionals WhatsApp group, aren't they?" Margaret's face shifted from pale to red in an instant. "How did you—" "Oh, but you did," Maya interrupted. "You even suggested that I was probably here to take advantage of the lonely widower." That's a direct quote from your messages last Thursday. Alexander turned slowly to Margaret, disbelief etched on his face. "Is this true?" The housekeeper stammered, clearly panicking. How did this woman have access to his private messages? And why did she seem to know exactly which buttons to push? Maya remained calm, but her eyes flashed with determination that Margaret finally recognized as danger. "Here's a woman who not only knows your secrets, but has come prepared for this confrontation," Maya said, her voice unwavering. "The truth, Mr. Kensington, is that I took this job because your family needs much more than just a nanny. And Margaret has been actively preventing any real progress in this house for much longer than you realize." For the first time, Alexander saw genuine fear in Margaret's eyes. And for the first time since hiring Maya, he began to suspect that there was much more to this quiet woman than met the eye. Every accusation Margaret made only seemed to strengthen Maya's resolve, a silent strength that grew in direct proportion to the injustice being imposed upon her. "Do you want to know the truth about what's happening in this house?" Maya asked, her voice maintaining that calm tone that was beginning to unsettle even Alexander. "Then let's start at the very beginning." She walked over to a side table and picked up a leather folder that Alexander had never seen before. "Margaret, are you sure you want to continue with these accusations? Because once I open this folder, there's no turning back." The panic in the housekeeper's eyes was palpable now. "Mr. Kensington, she's trying to intimidate us. This is exactly the kind of manipulative behavior I was talking about." But Alexander watched, fascinated by the transformation taking place before his eyes. The woman he had hired as a nanny was revealing layers of complexity that completely defied his expectations. Maya wasn't just polite, she was strategic. She wasn't merely competent, she was formidable. "3 weeks ago when I accepted this job," Maya continued, opening the folder, "it wasn't because I desperately needed a job. It was because I received a very interesting call from someone you know well." She pulled out an audio recording from her phone. "Dr. Emily Carter, the pediatrician who's been treating Lily and Daisy for 2 years. She contacted me after Margaret called to question my professional competence before I even started working air." Alexander felt a chill run down his spine. "Margaret, you called the girl's pediatrician?" "I just wanted to check if she knew this person," Margaret stammered, realizing she had fallen into a trap she didn't even know existed. Maya pressed play. Dr. Carter's clear voice echoed through the room. "Margaret, I need to tell you something. Maya Johnson is not just an ordinary nanny. She has a master's degree in child psychology and specializes in pediatric trauma. When I heard she had accepted the Kensington twins, I was intrigued. A professional of her caliber doesn't take domestic work out of necessity. The silence that followed was broken only by the muffled sound of children playing in the garden. Alexander looked at Maya as if he were seeing her for the first time. "You have a master's degree?" "University of Michigan," Maya replied with a soft smile. "I worked at Detroit Children's Hospital for 5 years before opening my own child trauma clinic. The question, Mr. Kensington, is why would a psychologist specializing in trauma close a successful clinic to work as a nanny?" Margaret was visibly panicking now. "That doesn't make sense. If you're so qualified, why? Why did I take a job that pays a fraction of what I used to earn?" Maya finished the question. "Because it wasn't about the money, Margaret. It was about justice." She pulled a series of documents from her briefcase. "6 months ago, Alexander, you fired an employee from your company for cultural incompatibility. Do you remember David Thompson, the black engineer who designed your latest residential complex?" Alexander frowned, clearly uncomfortable. "David, yes, there were some issues." "The issues were that Margaret suggested to your human resources manager that employees like him might not fit in with the Kensington image." Maya placed a document on the table, an email dated March 3rd, copied to 5 people on the board. Margaret turned pale. "How do you have access to internal company emails?" "Because David Thompson is my older brother," Maya revealed, her voice steady. The revelation hit the room like a bomb. "And when he told me about the systematic discrimination he faced here, I decided to personally investigate the family environment that created this kind of professional mentality." Alexander sat down heavily in an armchair, processing the information. His housekeeper, whom he had trusted for years, had actively interfered in business decisions based on racial prejudice. And the woman who was transforming his daughter's lives was the sister of the man he had unfairly dismissed. "David lost his job 2 days before the birth of his first child," Maya continued, her voice taking on controlled intensity. "He spent months unemployed, almost lost his home, and his wife suffered from postpartum depression without proper treatment because they didn't have health insurance." "I didn't know," Alexander murmured, genuinely shocked. "Of course you didn't. Margaret made sure you never found out." Maya turned to the housekeeper. "Because people like you operate in the shadows, whispering poison in the ears of those with decision-making power, planting seeds of doubt about the competence of people you consider unsuitable." Margaret tried one last desperate card. "Mr. Kensington, she's here to hurt us. It's a trap. She planned all of this." "You're right, Margaret. I planned it all." Maya smiled, but there was something dangerous about that smile. "But not to hurt anyone. I planned it to expose the truth about how prejudice operates in families like this, how it seeps into everything from household decisions to corporate ones." She picked up her phone and showed him a series of messages. "All of our conversations over the last 21 days have been recorded with legal consent. I informed you on my first day that I would be documenting my work for professional purposes. Every racial comment, every attempt at sabotage, every time you try to interfere in my relationship with the children." Alexander watched as Margaret broke down before his eyes. The woman he had respected as a pillar of his home had been systematically exposed as someone who operated from deep and dangerous prejudices. "The twins are sleeping because they finally have someone who understands childhood trauma taking care of them," Maya said, "not because they're being medicated, but because they're being treated by a qualified professional who recognizes the signs of unprocessed grief in young children." She closed the folder and looked directly at Alexander. "The question now is, what are you going to do with this information? Are you going to continue to allow people like Margaret to influence your decisions about employees and about your own daughters?" At that moment, Lily and Daisy came running through the door, their cheeks flushed from playing. "Daddy, Maya, we found a bird's nest in the oak tree." The children's radiant innocence contrasted sharply with the heavy tension in the air. Maya knelt down to greet them, and Alexander watched as his daughters clung to her with a confidence that had taken months to develop with any adult after their mother's death. For a moment, as he observed the scene, his daughters finally happy. The housekeeper he had trusted exposed as prejudiced, and the woman who had saved his family revealing herself as someone seeking justice for her brother. Alexander realized he was at the center of a lesson about how privilege and power could be wielded to both perpetuate injustice and correct it. But what neither Alexander nor Margaret knew yet was that Maya had documented much more than conversations and messages. She had uncovered connections between Margaret's domestic discrimination and Kensington Industries' corporate practices that went far beyond her brother's case. Connections that, once revealed, would not only destroy a career, but potentially rewrite the way the entire business elite of the city thought about social responsibility and the consequences of their prejudices. The twins' entrance momentarily broke the tension, but Maya knew this was the moment she had been waiting for. "Lily, Daisy, how about showing Daddy and Margaret the drawing you did yesterday about our nighttime routine?" The girls ran excitedly to fetch their drawings, leaving the three adults in a heavy silence. Margaret seized a moment to try one last desperate attack. "Mr. Kensington, she's even manipulating the children. This is proof that—" "Maya," she interrupted softly, picking up her tablet. "Are you sure you want to continue? Because we still have 15 minutes of footage from Lily's birthday party last month when you told Mrs. Thompson that people like me shouldn't have access to children from traditional families." Margaret's face turned from red to a deathly white. The birthday party had been an important social event with at least 20 elite families in attendance. If those recordings became public, "I also have your messages to the premium executive Nanny's WhatsApp group," Maya continued, swiping to the screen, "where you shared photos of me without permission, speculating about my true intentions with the family." Alexander stepped closer, taking the tablet from Maya's hands. His features hardened as he read the messages. "Margaret, you shared photos of my daughter's nanny with strangers, discussing our private life." "Mr. Kensington, I was just being cautious," Margaret stammered. "Cautious?" Alexander's voice rose an octave. "You violated my family's privacy, spread personal information, and even had the audacity to interfere in my business decisions based on racial prejudice." Maya watched the dynamic with controlled satisfaction. She had planned each revelation carefully, knowing that Alexander's pride as a father and businessman would be the most powerful weapon against Margaret's toxic influence. "But there's more," she said, opening another folder on her tablet. "Margaret, do you remember recommending the dismissal of 3 black employees from Kensington Industries in the last 2 years?" Always with seemingly technical justifications. The silence was absolute. Alexander looked at his housekeeper, as if he were seeing her for the first time. "Jennifer Smith, financial analyst, fired after Margaret suggested that people like her might not fit in with the company's conservative corporate culture. David Miller, architect, transferred to the least prestigious department after Margaret commented on his suitability for the clientele profile. And my brother David, of course. How do you have access to this inside information?" Alexander asked, genuinely confused. "Because after David was fired, I began systematically investigating the firing patterns at your company. I discovered that Margaret was in regular contact with 5 people in your human resources department, always offering insights about employees based on observations she made during social events and family gatherings." Maya showed him a detailed spreadsheet. Over the past 3 years, 16 black or Latino employees have been fired or demoted from Kensington Industries. In 60% of the cases, there was an email or phone call from Margaret in the files, always suggesting cultural concerns or questions about fit for the environment. Alexander sat down heavily, running his hands through his hair. "My God, Margaret, is this true?" The housekeeper finally broke down. "I just want to protect the family's reputation. People like her don't understand our values, our traditions." "Values?" Alexander exploded. "Discrimination? Prejudice? Destroying the lives of competent people based on the color of their skin?" At that moment, Lily and Daisy returned with their drawings. "Look, it's Maya reading us a story," exclaimed Lily, showing a colorful drawing of a black woman sitting between 2 children, all smiling. "And here she is teaching us about the stars," added Daisy, holding up another drawing where Maya pointed to starry sky, while the girls looked up in wonder. The innocence of the drawings contrasted brutally with the poisonous reality that had been exposed in the room. Alexander looked at his daughters, finally happy, finally sleeping well, finally confident, and realized the magnitude of the injustice he had allowed to flourish under his own roof. "Margaret," he said, his voice now controlled but relentless, "you're fired. I want you out of this house today." Mr. Kensington, please. 15 years of service. 15 years of influencing my decisions with prejudice, he corrected. 15 years sabotaging competent employees. 15 years poisoning the environment of my home and my company. Maya picked up one last folder from her materials. Alexander, there's one more thing you need to know. Margaret didn't just influence firings. She also blocked hires. She showed him a series of resumes. 23 highly qualified candidates were rejected in the last 2 years after Margaret did informal checks on their families and backgrounds. Among them were 2 engineers with degrees from MIT, an award-winning architect, and an analyst with an MBA from Harvard, all black or Latino. Alexander noted the resumes, scanning them. Professionals who could have contributed significantly to the company. Exactly. Meanwhile, less qualified candidates who fit Margaret's profile were hired at higher salaries and in better positions. Margaret made one last desperate attempt. Mr. Kensington, she set this all up. It's a conspiracy against me. Conspiracy? Maya laughed softly. Margaret, it would be a conspiracy if I had invented your words, forged your emails, or created your WhatsApp messages. All I did was document and organize your own actions. Alexander turned to his daughters, who were watching the tension between the adults with confusion. Girls, how about we go out to the garden while the adults finish talking? When the children left, he faced Margaret one last time. You have 1 hour to pack your bags. I don't want to see you on this property again. What about the company? Maya asked. Alexander took a deep breath. Tomorrow morning, I'll conduct a complete audit of the hiring and firing processes for the last 3 years. All affected employees will be contacted with offers of reinstatement or compensation. Margaret stumbled out of the room, completely defeated. 15 years of influence and power had crumbled in less than an hour in the face of her own evidence of discriminatory conduct. Maya watched the housekeeper leave, feeling a deep but controlled satisfaction. It wasn't cruelty. It was pure justice served with surgical precision. Why? Alexander asked when they were alone. Why go to all this trouble? To come here, take care of my daughters, and face all this prejudice just to expose Margaret. Maya replied simply, because injustice unchallenged is injustice perpetuated, and because Lily and Daisy deserve to grow up in an environment where competence matters more than skin color. But there was one last revelation that neither Alexander nor Margaret knew yet. A discovery Maya had made about the true connections between Margaret's domestic discrimination and a much larger network of systematic exclusion that extended throughout the city's business elite, and that was about to transform not just one family, but an entire corporate culture based on unquestioned privilege. 6 months later, the transformation in Lily and Daisy's lives was only a small part of a much larger revolution that Maya had quietly orchestrated. David Thompson sat in his new office at Kensington Industries, now as Director of Sustainable Development, a position created especially to leverage his expertise in inclusive housing projects. The salary was 40% higher than his previous one, and he received a stake in the company as compensation for his months of unemployment. I still can't believe my sister did all this, he told Alexander during one of their weekly meetings, which now included discussions about corporate diversity. She planned every move for months. Alexander smiled, looking out the window at the new community garden the company had created on the vacant lot next door, a project led by 3 of the employees who had been reinstated after the audit. Your sister didn't just save my daughters. She saved my company from becoming obsolete in a world that no longer tolerates systematic discrimination. The full audit had revealed an even more extensive pattern than Alexander had imagined. 23 employees were reinstated or compensated appropriately. 5 supervisors who had actively participated in the discriminatory practices were fired. The company implemented a new blind hiring protocol where resumes were evaluated without photos or names that could reveal ethnic origin. Margaret, for her part, discovered that 15 years of influence based on prejudice did not build a solid professional network. None of the elite families rehired her after Maya's recordings circulated discreetly in the Nanny's WhatsApp groups. She was now working at a chain hotel, earning less than half of what she had earned at the Kensington estate. The most impressive thing, Alexander continued, is that she never wanted to destroy anyone. She wanted to transform the system. Maya had declined Alexander's offer to become a permanent consultant for the company. Instead, she used her documented experience to start a consulting firm specializing in identifying and correcting institutional bias. Her first client was a Detroit hospital network facing lawsuits over racial discrimination in patient care. Lily and Daisy, now 5, attended a more diverse school that Alexander had chosen specifically to broaden their world. Maya still visited them twice a week, no longer as a nanny but as Aunt Maya, the woman who had turned nightmares into peaceful dreams and taught them that families are built on love, not prejudice. "Daddy, is Aunt Maya coming to my birthday?" Daisy asked over breakfast, wearing the star necklace she never took off. "Of course, Princess. And your Uncle David, too," Alexander replied, still surprised at how natural it felt to call Maya's brother family. The true measure of Maya's success was not in the impressive numbers of her consulting firm or the 23 employees she'd helped get rehired at Kensington Industries. It was in the call she received the week before from a young black mother in Chicago who had seen her interview on a social justice podcast. "My 6-year-old son is being discriminated against at school," the woman said. "The teachers say he's troubled, but I know he's smart. Can you help me document what's going on?" Maya smiled, picking up a new notebook. "Let's start at the beginning. Tell me everything you've noticed. Because the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you. It's building bridges where there were walls, create opportunities where there was exclusion, and turning pain into purpose." Alexander Kensington learned that privilege without awareness is a dangerous weapon, but privilege with purpose can rewrite entire histories. Margaret tried to use prejudice as power, but discovered that hatred always builds sandcastles. Maya used intelligence as justice and built a legacy that will last for generations. If this story of transformation through courage has touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, because sometimes change in the world starts with one person brave enough to document the truth and strategic enough to use it with surgical precision.